I'm so excited about my guest today. I have Matt McInnes Watson, who's also known as the Plyo Guy. He's a former high jumper turned performance coach and specialist in track and field, speed, power, and plyometrics. Matt is also the owner of Plus Plyos, a coaching business that provides plyometric programs and education. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you ever so much for having me on. I appreciate the kind introduction, and it's exciting to be here.
So let's go straight into it. As you know, most of my audience are women over 40, 50. What are the benefits of plyometrics for women over, we'll say over 50?
I think this goes for every human on Earth. It doesn't always have to affect a certain demographic. And obviously certain people could say that, plyometrics are most valuable for people in performance sport. But I see plyometrics as a proponent for health and longevity. And I look at it with regards to how it affects the trifecta of tissue: bone, muscle, and tendon. You could say ligament in there as well. And ultimately, as we get older, we do a lot less dynamic work. And in doing so, we don't work the muscle as much. And that muscle doesn't pull on the tendon as much. And that tendon then doesn't pull on the bone as much. And that tends to then lead to lower quality of bone health, whether it's density, whether it's most of it is density, but the capacity for it to withstand high levels of force. And high levels of force are present in things that we do day to day, whether that is walking downstairs, whether it's just trying to, run after a small infant child. You are experiencing high force. You can look at like jogging along, and you could experience 3 to 4 times your own body weight in each of those landings. And if you were to put that level of load on your back and try to squat it, the likelihood is that you're probably never going to get that strong. So we understand that in these instances of fast levels of force, we're stimulating the bone, the tendon, and the muscle. And ultimately, it's going to provide a lot of health to that tissue. But on the flip side of it, so those could be the physical things within our body that are really influenced by it. We also have how the neuromuscular system also then works. So how our brain can anticipate the way that, life might throw a stumble into our way. So we might trip over something. Do we have the anticipation to catch ourselves? Now, I want to talk to people in their 40s and 50s might think, come on, I'm not 70 or 80 quite yet. But I think that is the time to catch back up what you may have missed out when you had young children, when major jobs got in the way and you weren't able to do as much physical work. I think it's no good trying to do all the catching up into later ages. And I think everyone understands that let's build the foundation of what's really going to support us in older age, in a younger age, and continue to do that. So tripping for me, for falling, being able to catch yourself effectively, and that could be you're trying to catch yourself from stumbling, and you're able to slam your foot into the ground. That is pretty much a plyometric movement without the takeoff side of it. But that ability for your brain to anticipate what's about to happen, for it to stabilize all the components of the body that it needs to, do it simultaneously and do it super quick. Is so valuable. And sorry, go on.
Oh no, you're just making me think. Just this past week, I had 2 separate conversations. One with someone who was a 911 dispatcher, and then just a firefighter, just talking about their job. And they both said the majority of their calls are for people who have fallen, and they literally are not able to get themselves up. Like that's where a lot of the calls. So this goes exactly into what you're saying. Just training the ability to not let that happen, or to be able to react quickly, to be able to take a fall.
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes
exactly. Yeah, it's a billion-dollar industry. Like it genuinely, like the full industry is for hip replacements, for shattered wrists and shattered elbows. That there are so many major trauma injuries that certain people never recover from. And I think it's
Hmm.
like I've heard of females falling in their mid to late 60s, and that really is the starting point for the kind of downfall for the rest of their lives. And it sounds
Yeah.
awful to say that, but it's reality in a lot of cases.
Hmm.
Once you've had to have that hip replacement, I always talk about um, immobility. Oh, sorry, lack of mobility leads to immobility, right? Your
Hmm.
ability to get up, move, change direction, accelerate, decelerate, catch yourself from falling, having that freedom. If you don't use it, then as they say, you do truly lose it. So um, I think that, as I mentioned before, starting early
Hmm.
is critical.
You answered one of my questions, which was why isn't plyometrics just for athletes or sports training? Because people usually think of it as that. But maybe I'll go into the question is how I think a lot of people probably, if they haven't been doing it for a while, like we might have done it when we were in high school or, played team
Mm,
sports. And now by mid-age, people often associate jumping with knee pain. So
mm,
how would a normal person with some kind of previous injury or knee pain transition into plyos? And uh, I was going to say, why would they? I mean, to me, it's very
yeah,
obvious why someone would want to, but
yeah.
like, what are some of the segues into it? If
Mm,
let's say you're 45 and you've never done before and you kind of have a cranky knee.
mm. I mean, I think that you do have to obviously be careful. 100% if you have debilitating knee pain, doing dynamic movement is probably not the starting point. So you have to know your body well and saying, you know what, if I went for a jog or if I went to try and run, would I get a lot of pain out of it? So much so that it would stop me from actually completing the run? Or would
Hmm.
it, would I pay the price for the next week or 2 weeks in doing something like that? Is it so much of an issue that it really would, I'd say maybe it would light a fire in that injury and continue to grow that pain.
Hmm.
If so, I think I think that that's where I kind of point people in the direction of um, uh, you know physical therapy, someone that's really going to help them. Because if it is a tendon issue, can I help them with dynamic movement? I can.
Hmm.
I can help mitigate some of those issues, and I can find ways for you to get into it. But I think that there potentially is a deeper level to the potential issue there. Um, but in saying so, you know, everyone's going to have a few aches and pains, which is
Hmm.
fine. Sometimes movement is the cure for some aches and pains. If
Hmm.
it is debilitating, there's a whole other thing. But if you're just a standard person, you think, oh, my ankle's a bit sore sometimes, or when I do too
Yes.
much of that, I get a little, oh, my back's a little bit sore. And that's fine. I
Yes.
think doing some like general strength training is always going to be valuable. So a
Hmm.
couple of times a week, could you squat? Could you do a hinge pattern? Can you pull yourself up? Can you push things away? Can you strengthen your lower legs by doing some calf work? Basic stuff. And in
Yeah.
the midst of that, I think you then question, well, what would it be like to just bounce on the spot a bit? I use the perfect example for me now. I have a 2-year-old daughter. What would it be like for me to dance like in our living room together? And I'm bouncing around with her. That's the sort of thing that I feel like everyone on this planet should be able to do, right? You should be able just to do some light bounces. And
Hmm.
that really is my starting. Can you do that? Could you
Yep.
actually do quite a high repetition of that sort of stuff? And you probably could. You could probably put a song on and you could bounce around
Hmm.
like we do at the moment. She likes certain songs from Disney movies, and we'll put a song on and we just jump around and bounce around. And she loves it. She trots and gallops around the room, and we mimic it and have fun with it. And it's something that I believe that even grandparents should be able to do. Like my mum's
Yep.
into her mid 60s, and she definitely can do that.
Hmm.
So that's my starting point. Plyometrics don't have to look like world class athletics. They
Yep.
just can start from a very humanistic kind of locomotive. We all have that capacity to just bounce around, hop around a little bit. And I think as soon as we lose that, that really shows our age.
Uh-huh.
So, but it shouldn't show our age. That my goal in life is to push that, is to develop even people into their 80s. Can you still bounce around? I had a step grandfather that died in his early 90s. Honestly,
Oh, wow.
into his late 80s, he was like a spring chicken. He talks about how he boxed in the Navy when he was in his early 20s. And he would stand up and show a few jabs and bounce around like a boxer in his late 80s. And it's kind
Yep.
of that's how I want to see a lot of people. And I
Yep.
saw the longevity of his life was through his ability to move so well. I really felt that. So,
Yep.
a basic starting point is that idea. Can you bounce around your living room with a young child? And I think that's a great starting point.
That kind of makes me think of a comment that you say a lot, which is why do you call plyometrics the fountain of youth? I mean, I can totally feel like when I'm bouncing doing plyometrics, it feels you feel young.
I would love to know the data on the dopamine responses that come from jumping. I would love to truly know how much it's the same feeling that when you go for like a long run, at the end of it, it tends to feel that you get this dopamine rush. It's not quite in the middle of it sometimes. I definitely get that vibe, but bouncing around is like instantaneous. It's like you're like hitting the ground and it just feels good. And I think it's because it's reflexive. It is, and it's super rhythmical, and your body likes rhythms, and it's why you like to dance, I think, and it's why it's certain people just start to dance when music comes on. Again, when my daughter was, before the age of 1, you'd put music on and she'd start to wiggle her hips, and it's like we as humans, we find rhythm, we find that synchronicity of muscles firing at the right time and relaxing at the right time. And I think the difference with plyometrics comparison to like weight training is you may get that euphoria after it, but plyometrics is instantaneous. Whilst you're doing it, you're like, this feels so good. And I think it's that synchronization. I think it's that internal rhythm in the body. And obviously it's just downright fun to leave the ground. So.
to bounce.
Exactly.
I think I've had people ask, because sometimes I don't wear shoes when I'm doing anything. Do you have, I guess when you train athletes or just clients, barefoot or no barefoot, thoughts on advantages, benefits and disadvantages?
So I think that if you're doing this for health longevity reasons, I don't see any reason why you can't do a lot of this work barefoot. People love that feeling, the sensations. They have a heightened awareness with a barefoot. I think it also had this random conversation about it's quite random, but on concussion and it's very relatable in terms of talking about impacts. Landing is an impact or a collision, and striking someone in the face is a collision. It's the same sort of thing. But this idea that the NFL maybe gets so many concussions or dramatic brain injuries. And I said, if you removed the helmet, the padding, and you were to just hit people as you are like a rugby player, you wouldn't hit as hard, and we wouldn't get quite as many concussions. Or bare knuckle boxing it looks quite brutal, but it's far less.
That's interesting.
You're not going to hit as hard because you're going to break your hand. So when it comes to the plyometric side, I actually think starting someone out with a bit of bare footwork is valuable, because it is almost going to be the safety mechanism, because I'm not really sure how much my bare foot is going to be able to handle. I wouldn't say it as much with an experienced young athlete, that can really let it rip and just slam the ground with their foot, because you're always getting to a stage where you really don't kind of know just how much force you can deliver at that point. So it's like the volume of that work is probably going to have to drop down significantly, because it's like, I use the phrase, what would be the most intense plyometric? It would be barefoot on concrete, right? It's,
Yeah.
but there is the flip side of it, in that if you're a complete beginner, that awareness, that proprioceptive awareness, the sensations that you get through the foot, you'll start to understand it a little better. And it also then might become the protective mechanism. So,
Like almost self-limiting, like your body knows, okay, too much, too little.
yeah.
Oh, it's interesting because
Yeah, you know that if you slammed your heel into the ground, you're going to be like, oh yeah, my heel doesn't like to do that. Right.
Yes.
So,
Oh, I like that. So it's like a teaching mechanism. Because I was thinking,
exactly.
like with kettlebell work, we always prefer flat or barefoot, just so you can really feel the ground in order to
Yes.
understand how to generate power. So that makes
Yep.
sense. Um,
Yep.
what's interesting is I think that in terms of longevity, everyone always talks about strength training. I don't think there's a lot, or maybe there's not an evangelist about how important plyometrics is. So how would you fit, first, because most people, that's just all over the place. So you got to lift weights. How would you fit in jump training or plyometrics with strength training if someone was going a couple times a week? For someone
I
who
would,
says like, I want to start, I don't know how much and
yeah.
how to do that.
Yeah. So let's say that you're time critical.
Hmm.
You've only got three opportunities a week to do it. I would stack it with my gym work. I would use it as my warm up, and you can, honestly, it goes as simple as, you know what? If you don't want to do it in the gym, do it at home before you get in the car, before you go to the gym. And why not put on a song? Put on a song that's around 3 minutes to 4 minutes, and you're going to bounce on 2 feet for that entirety of the song. Can you last the song? If not, try a shorter song, try half the song. And it honestly can be as basic as that. It really can. If you wanted to get a little more deeper with that, you're at the gym, you're going to choose a few different movement patterns that you could do. So you could try a 2-foot movement. You could try a 2-foot split movement where one foot's a little bit further in front of the other, and you're going to hold that stance. And then you could try a split exchanging movement. The split exchanging one is a little bit more advanced, but you'll start to get it. And that split exchange is the front leg goes to the back and the back leg goes to the front. And every landing, that changes back and forth. So you can have those 3 movements.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Today, you're going to just do a set of 10 to 15 of each of those movements. The next week, you know what? One of these movements I'm going to do forward, one of them I'm going to do laterally, and one of them I'm going to do backwards. And you start to play I talk about variety of movement being a real critical factor, especially for movement health and longevity, in that I imagine, like, if I put my foot down on the ground, everyone has a heat map of how far out from that perfect landing you could land and still maintain, maybe not injuring yourself, not rolling your ankle, falling over. So can you land, let's say, a foot out to the right or a foot behind you? The people that don't have that history, that don't have that variety, their heat map is a lot smaller. So your capacity to handle the variations of day-to-day life, or the variety of day-to-day life, is a lot less. So if we do a lot of movement variety in different directions, different patterns back and forth, we build this larger heat map around our feet that gives us that freedom, and it gives it to us in a subconscious way, not consciously thinking, oh, I can put my foot down there. No, it's just happening. It's reflexively happening.
You're teaching your brain like, oh, I can handle all these different
I can
movements.
handle all of those different movements in all those different directions. And if I put my foot slightly splayed out, or if it's slightly turned in, I've got the capacity in my tissue to handle it, and something doesn't go bang and I rupture something. That's also a big thing. So that movement variety, I think, is the absolute key to longevity when it comes to falls and trips and so on.
That makes
And
a lot of sense.
so be inventive with it, be creative. If we're talking about how high or how far, don't worry about it. Do not worry about it. Make it feel easy. If you don't bounce off the ground with a nice pop, then it's probably too intense.
Okay, that's a
You
good
know, especially for someone that's starting out. Make it feel light. So I call like this range of movement for me, I call the light tier. It is light on your feet. I want to feel bouncy.
Yep.
I don't want to be trying to slam my feet into the ground, trying to go for as much height as possible, because I don't think that really is going to give you much benefit in comparison to being able to do 10 times that amount of just lighter stuff.
That actually goes into a question I had so that you can talk about the light and deep tier. So you have I looked at it as a beginner program, but also it's called Return to Sport. And then
it is a beginner program.
It is perfect. And then you have light tier exercises, deep tier exercises. Could you, I guess for people who don't know what that means, could you talk about that? Now you talked a little bit about the light tier.
Yeah. So the light stuff is nice and tall. We're really just kind of bouncing off of our feet, super light. The time that you spend on the ground is going to be quite short because it is easy. You're not jumping very high. You're not jumping very far. And it's very rhythmical in that sense. It should just be bum, 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 bum. So if you hear those off patterns, if one's like boom, and then you've got a lighter one or a heavier one or a heavy one, it shows you straight away that actually maybe you need to just calm it down a little bit in terms of how high you're trying to go and just work on the rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. Now the deep tier is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, not necessarily in intensity, but in terms of the depth and the time that you spend in those movements. So the perfect example is like a split stance, where you're going to drop right down into like a long lunge position. That back knee is almost going to touch the ground, and you've got that long split, and you might start in a super low position, and I call these deep oscillatory landings, where you're almost going to not come out of the movement, and you're just going to stay down low. You're just going to bounce in there, just boom, 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 boom. You're not going to fully extend out. That's the kind of next step on from that. And really, the deep tier stuff is about expressing that force through long ranges of motion. So you're going to land and you're going to sink into it. You're going to yield the force. You're not going to try and fight it. So you sink into it, and then you're going to try and get back out of that and express the same amount of energy that you brought into that movement. And this is the goal for that.
Is it trying to like explore that end range for your body?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's exposing the body to those. It's exposing the tissue to those deeper ranges. And that is also another component for catching falls. So if you can't catch it fast and you're actually in a deeper position, can I catch it deeper? So it trains that spectrum of you could land in a deep position, and some people are doomed in that position. Even world-class athletes are sometimes doomed in that position. But you also then have the super like reflexive quick catches. So some people have none of it because they don't train anything dynamically.
Yeah.
So I like to fill in those, wishy-washy areas of make it fast, and you can also make it deep and catch that stuff. Now the deep tier is not plyometric at all, because to class a movement of plyometric, it's got to be fast. You've got to leave the ground, and it's got to be fast. You've got to land and leave the ground we're talking a quarter of a second. So under like the blink of an eye sort of speed. When you're in deeper range of motion, you're talking up to 0.7, 0.8, even a second of length of time under tension. And what's really special about the deep tier is that it's so therapeutic. It is, you take the muscle through a much longer loading pattern, and sometimes you can build up some high reps and it can really pump some blood flow into it. Sometimes if you're not experiencing it, so I get told that I've got a little bit of soreness from doing some of that deep tier stuff.
I was thinking about like a split lunge, deep tier split lunge. Yeah.
Oh yes. So what you've got there is it's similar to strength training, but instead of using weight as the external stimulus, you're using velocity as the loading pattern. So it's the speed in which you're loaded into those deep positions that gives that stress. So if you're not used to it at first, you're going to get a little sore, but believe me, it will get better and easier, and you'll just start to, I call it greasing and grooving into those deep ranges. And once you get used to it and you use it regularly, it's fantastic. It's the best in terms of the feeling that you get off of it. Again, another big dopamine hit off of those. And people's joints generally feel great after doing it.
I think it's contradictory because I think when they see that, they assume it's going to be more painful getting into the deep tier. And that would be why physical therapists, I think people don't realize that they use stuff like that also when you're going through ankle or knee rehab. For that reason. And that's helpful. My last question is, I think we kind of covered this. I was like, an overview on how you would advise someone to incorporate your beginner program. So would you do into their strength? So besides the way you were saying, like maybe doing light hops, but you would just accompany whatever they're doing in the gym with the, like, for example, the Return to Sport program?
Yeah, I think so. I love to pair things up like that. So, I mean, the programs that I put out, so like our Return to Sport program, it's not going to take you long to do it. Really, once you've got relatively warm, it can take you 10 to 15 minutes maximum. But the return on investment is so great. We're not doing set after set after set. It should be super easy. So if you're using like light and deep tier movements, I sometimes will get people to use the light tier as a warm up, go and lift, and then do some deep tier movements to finish with. On another day, you could flip it. We're going to use some deep tier movements to prep you for, let's say you're going to get to some back squatting. We're going to get into a deep range of motion. The deep tier is going to get me into a comfortable position in those deep ranges. And then when I get to my back squats, I'm like, whoa, I feel so much better mobility wise to get into that position because I've just experienced it at speed. And then you might finish the session. Do you know what? We're just going to bounce around a little bit. We've been doing loads of stuff in real deep positions, and it feels quite easy now to just bounce in the light tier at the end of the session. There's no right or wrong answer. And I think play is also a big proponent of what I try to get people to do is try it in different places. Sometimes you'll get it wrong, and that's fine. Sometimes you'll do the deep tier stuff, and then you'll try and squat, and you'll be like, well, I've never done that deep tier before, and I just tried to squat, and my strength numbers went considerably lower. So you understand, okay, maybe I need to do a few more weeks of that before I can pair the deep tier stuff with the squats. I need to do the deep tier stuff after I've done my squats, whatever it might be in terms of, some strength training. So just play with it. It's not
a black and white, like must do this, must do that.
No. And it's not something that you should be scared about. It shouldn't be that, I'm intimidated, I'm going to hurt myself. You're not going to. In our Return to Sport phases, you're really not. So if you want to, separate it completely. On this day, I'm going to do my plyometric sessions at home in the backyard. Why not? Why not? And I also do preach that to people. Get out on a piece of nice grass, get barefoot, and just bounce around for a little bit. It can take you 15, 20 minutes. Have fun with it. Exactly. If I could go back to any point in my athletic journey, it's in the early fall. It's starting to get dark. We're out on grass. It's a floodlit pitch, and we're all barefoot, and we're just doing lots of rudimentary and easy plyometrics. And that, for me, you feel great from that session. It feels great to be out on grass. It's just, there's something about that just kind of ticks all my boxes in terms of that, those sort of memories that brings back to me. So if I can continue to do that into, older ages, then I think I'll keep that fountain of youth within me.
How long were you a competitive athlete before you switched over to coaching plyometrics?
So it's strange, actually, because I didn't start high jumping and learning about plyometrics, even beginning to do plyometrics until I was 19.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I started a lot later than most people would start in a sport.
Right.
But I played soccer and basketball all the way through my childhood, and then competed for around 7 years as a high jumper, and then kind of transitioned into coaching it. So I've been around it now for just around 15 years now. So 16 years now. So yeah.
But you obviously love it, since now it's even when people find you, I'll put all the details of how to find Matt in the show notes, but what you write about shows how deeply passionate you are about plyometrics and people adding it to life, how to do it, and then just you get into the weeds of like how to do it, not just do it this way, but it's fantastic.
Yeah. And I really I see it developing into movement longevity as well, because
Absolutely.
I see my mentor and how he hops around, like
How old is
genuinely
he?
he's 75.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and he can move. He
Uh-huh.
can move.
That's inspiration.
Yeah. And he's just always continued to do it. Like every week he's like, oh, I've got to get in some people will strength train,
Uh-huh.
and he just does body weight stuff, and he just uses plyometrics and sprinting as his means to stay super fit. And it's funny because I watch him move. Like I'm going back to the UK in the end of this month, and we'll meet up for a coffee, and I can see that he moves so well just on how he walks into the coffee shop. Like I can tell you, if he walked in with another 75-year-old, I could tell you straight away the differences, and it's fascinating.
If you saw his back and someone who didn't know him saw him walking, they would never think he was the age that he was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes back, like his posture is phenomenal. Like the way that he holds himself, it's like looking at like a 30-year-old male or 25-year-old male. Like he just holds himself so well. He's got such a great core and trunk stability and strength there, which is a proponent of the plyometrics and the dynamic movement that he does. So it's not just this lower body thing. There's a whole body component to this, because obviously, you've got this big hunk of weight in the middle of you that you've got to control when you bounce around. So you're constantly stabilizing and maneuvering your body to be able to handle these forces. So yeah, it's a goal of mine to continue to kind of move dynamically until later ages. And it's something that I really just want to instill in my children, and how that echoes kind of throughout our family and stuff.
Well, I saw how you put your daughter on the little balance beam, and then she was hopping over it. That was very cute. Oh, that was in your, I think you did a post about that.
Yeah. That was such good fun. Just playing around with her like that. And kids love to jump, sprint, and throw, and it's just so much fun.
They like being in the air. I was thinking when you grab a little kid and you bring them up, they
love it.
Yeah.
They love it. And like my daughter just walks into the room now. She's like, watch. She just jumps up in the air and then she'll just run out.
That's fantastic.
Already showing off what she can do. So I love it.
Matt, thank you so much for your time. And for everyone listening, I'm going to put how you can find him on Instagram in the show notes, and all the details about his programs that he's got will be there too. All right. I will talk to you all next week.
Thank you ever so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
I'm Coach Tina. For more information about how to work with me, head to ironstrongfitness.com and send me a message. I'll see you next time.